Thank you, Kieran Cole. I'm glad to be able to speak here today about the capital programme for the next few years. As a civil engineer, I realise the importance of investment in our nation's infrastructure. And there's no doubt that the nation's capital investment has been hugely successful in developing our infrastructure over the last 20 years. In my own county of Meath, for instance, we now have 4 motorways, and each of those helping to make it easier for jobs to come to the area, making it easier for businesses and for people to move around and go about their everyday lives. And we've reached the stage now where there's very few shortfalls and gaps in our road network, and in terms of the gaps that are there, it's more about the provision of bypasses and also ensuring that the current road network is maintained well, as opposed to the construction of new motorways. But we do need to learn lessons from the motorway construction programme, and I think we need to be looking at how effective the spend was and whether the capital costs were, in some cases, excessive. For the next 4 years, we've managed to find €17 billion to spend on capital budgets. Next year will see us spend about €4 billion. It is a reduction of €750 million, but it's still a large amount. And for Deputy Fleming to come in here and talking about us raiding funds is totally unacceptable, particularly since that deputy and his party raided each and every citizen of this country and put their children into hock for generations. So I don't accept that terminology. And he talks about the lack of jobs that are going to be created by this €17 billion capital programme. Let me remind him that when he left government, he left us with 440,000 people on the unemployment register, and that's something that we're trying to get out of. We're trying to create jobs, and I think that this capital investment programme will go a long way to creating jobs. But what we have to do is ensure that we get the best value for money from this expenditure, and we also need to target expenditure on those projects which are going to give us the best return for our money. And as somebody who's designed and overseen the construction of many road projects, I want to see more bypasses built. And I say that for a number of reasons. They reduce the travel times for motorists, they make it easier for businesses to do their business, they relieve clogged up towns and villages, and they make it more attractive for people to come and visit there and to live there. And of course they reduce the number of accidents in the towns and villages, as well as creating jobs during the construction phase. So schemes like the proposed bypass of Slane on the N2 would achieve all of these objectives, and I'm glad that the Minister has made sure that there is sufficient funds in the budget to proceed with the purchase of the land for this particular bypass. Over the next few years, I'll be pushing him to release more money for construction. I think every euro spent on a bypass such as Slane, €3 back to society at large through the social and economic benefits that are generated. I mentioned earlier that prior to entering politics, I worked in the transport sector. One of my roles in the past was as the investment appraisal manager for new transport projects for British Rail. And while I was there, I was responsible for carrying out a cost-benefit analysis for a new underground line in London known as Crossrail. And I learned a lot then about the various benefits that could be delivered by new metro systems. But I have to say that from looking at the published documentation on Metro North here in Dublin, I still remain unconvinced as to whether or not the current proposal does represent the most effective use of public money. And even taking into account social benefits, time savings, road decongestion, accident savings, job creation, climate change benefits and all the other items that are included in the standard appraisal, it appears that the project even then just about washes its face. And this is at a time when there are other projects that would give a greater return to public investment. So at a time when we have to be very selective about investment, when funds are limited, it's only right that we think again about Metro North. We need to ask, would a slimmed down version be better? Would a more intensive bus quality network be better? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Our funds are limited, let's use them wisely.